So in this video we're going to talk about listeners. I have created a database here. There is no listener yet. I'm going to go to $Oracle Home, Network Admin, and notice there's no listener.ora. So I'm going to actually create a dynamic listener at this point. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use netca to do it. And that's all there's to it. So now there should be something in listener.ora. Let's cat it. Listener.ora. And this is what the listener.ora looks like. And now let's go ahead and start the listener if it's not already started. LSNRCTL. Start listener. It's already started. Let's do it. LSNRCTL status. So it's started, but the database hasn't quite registered with it just yet. So let's go ahead and force a registration. Alter system register. Now let's do LSNRCTL status. And now we have a service. This is the service. And so we're done here. One last thing I'd like to do is services. And that's it for this particular part of the episode. Next set, I'm going to actually create a static listener. So in this section, what I want to do is create a static listener. First of all, I'm going to show the listener as it is currently in the listener.ora. And then I want to show the differentiate between a static listener and a dynamic listener. Here we have a dynamic listener. We are listening on port 1521, and let's take a look at the services. LSNRCTL status. And so we have a service called ocm.us.oracle.com, and we can connect to it, and that's okay. But now what I want to do is go ahead and run NetManager. Create a static listener. We're going to call this OCM_static, and the database name is called OCM. Notice that I had to click here on listener and create a static listener. So the static listener is associated with an existing listener. You can't just create a static listener, or you have to create a new one. And let's look at the listener.ora. Listener.ora. Okay, so now we have a new section here that has this part of it, and this is now going to be a service here as well. I'm going to go ahead and bounce the listener. Let's go ahead and register the database too, just while we're here. System register. So LSNRCTL status of listener. And so now we have this particular service, which is associated as a dynamic listener, a dynamic service. And this one is associated with also OCM, but it is a static what we call a static listener, or a static service associated with this, which is static. So let's go ahead and shut down the database, and I'll show you the difference. Currently, we can connect to both databases. So before I can do that, I can just do SQL plus sys/nimda at sys1.sn1. sysdba, and that works. And then I also can do this as OCM_static at sysdba, and that works also. Now let's go ahead and shut down the database. Shut down media. Let's check out the listener here. NRCTL status. And notice that the dynamic service from the dynamic listener is now gone. There's no ocm.us.oracle.com. There's only ocm static. If I try to do this, sys/nimda at base sys/1 si1 ocm.us.oracle.com as sysdba, it fails, because dynamic listeners can only connect to databases that are up and running, whereas static listeners can connect to a database even if it's not up and running. And let's go ahead and test that out. So if I said ocm_static as sysdba, I can connect to the database. It's down, but I can connect to the database. And why this is important, this shows up to be important in DataGuard. If you use DataGuard, especially in a command line fashion, there are times where you have to connect to the database remotely, as I have done here with the @sign as sysdba, but you have to connect remotely, and the database might not be up at that point, and you have to restart them. So you have to have static listeners in a DataGuard environment if you intend to use the command line. I believe if you just use OEM, you don't need them, because OEM goes in separately. It logs in through the agent perhaps, or it SSHs into the servers, and then it starts the databases that way. But if you're using command line, it's going to have to use this method with static listeners. And that's it for this particular part of this section. So in this section, what I want to do is create a database that listens on the non-default port, not 1521. And there's basically two ways to do this. You can do this with a TNS names entry, or without a TNS names entry. So the first example I'm going to do here is without a TNS names entry. So first of all, let me just show what we have currently. So we have NRCTL status. So we have one listener now. It's called listener, and it's listening on port 1521, and this is the service. So let's create a new listener. So I'm going to use netca. So I'm going to call it listener 2. Port 1522. Now let's look at cat listener.ora. So now we see we have the original listener, and now we have listener 2, and that's fine. So now let me open up a different window here, and so let's go ahead and set it to this. Alter system set local listener is equal to, and all we need is this portion of it. All right, and let's do alter system. Well, before we do, well, let's do alter system register go ahead and bounce the first listener, LSNRCTL. Yeah. Stop listener. And LSNRCTL start listener. And now let's do LSNRCTL status of listener 2. And now we see that it has this particular service, which is our database. And let's try to go ahead and connect to it. SQL Plus. And it connects. And that's it for this section. Okay, in the previous section you saw me create a database that listened on a non-default port, namely 1522, and I updated the local listener based on some information in the listener itself. So cat listener.ora. I actually took this portion of the listener 2 syntax and I made it in. I put it into the database itself in the local listener parameter. Let's look at that again. And the local listener is set to this 1522. You can also set this up using a TNIS names entry, and that's what I want to show today. So actually what I'm going to do is copy this whole thing and bitns names.ora and put that in there, and I'm going to say alter system set local listener is equal to listener 2, and then actually I'm going to stop LSNRCTL stop listener 2 and restart it. LSNRCTL start listener 2, and then let's register. Alter system register, and let's look at the LSNRCTL status of listener 2. And so now we see that service. So let's see if I can connect. SQL plus sys/nimda at asys/1522/ocm.us.oracle.com as sysdba. And we got the same result as before, but this time instead of specifying the string that's part of the listener name syntax, we actually just created a TNIS names entry and referenced it. So basically it's the same thing. And that's the end of this video.